It was beautiful blue sky and then a layer of cloud, and the only thing popping out from the clouds was the summit of Everest. I just remember thinking, that's it. I'm coming back to climb to the summit of Everest, but I don't know anything about climbing, don't know anything about mountaineering. But none of that matters because I know I can learn those skills, or I can at least have a go. So I made Everest a 5-year goal. It actually turned into a 9-year goal. Did as much climbing as I could to, get the skills and the experience. I met people on Everest who had never stepped foot on snow before going to the summit. And it's like, just don't be one of those people. I have a motto, don't get lucky, get prepared. So that runs through everything I do if I don't know how to do it. And that spans everything in life, from the more smaller things to the bigger goals is, if I don't know how to do it, go and figure it out, have a go. And, either you like it or you don't, but you'll never know if you don't try.
My guest today is Holly Budge, a woman who skydived over Everest, climbed it, and raced 1,000 kilometres across Mongolia on horseback. But it's not just her bold adventures that stand out, it's what she learned from them. In this conversation, we explore how Holly built the mental resilience to keep going when things got tough, how she moved from world-first records to world-changing conservation, and why small steps stacked consistently can lead to the most extraordinary outcomes. Whether your mountain is literal or metaphorical, this episode is full of insight. Holly, you have done some truly wild and wonderful things, a few of which we've heard about in the intro. But I want to just go back to the start, to your start, because I think it's amazing that someone like you is so different to someone like me, seemingly. And I wonder if there were a few things early on that made you have the belief that you could do those things, even though all of them you've told me you didn't know how to do before you thought about doing them.
Yeah, it's a good question. Great to be here chatting with you, Wendy. I was a pretty high energy child. I got expelled from school when I was 4, which I've been told I should probably put that on my CV. That's quite an achievement.
Surely you had hardly even started at 4.
Well, that's what they thought too, probably. Like, oh my gosh, what have we got here? I think nowadays it's probably got a name, but back then it was disruptive and lots of energy. So I found outlets to, put my energy into, and a lot of that was in competitive environments. So I was competing into triathlons, doing running, swimming, target shooting, and horse riding. And even from a really young age, like 5 or 6, I was part of a team. So there was 4 of us in the team. We were all pretty competitive. Each one of us had our strengths. So, one girl was great at running, another good at shooting. I was good at swimming and horse riding. And we took it really seriously. And more often than not, we came home, with the first prize. And I think from a really young age, it kind of spelled out the importance for me of training and preparation. I remember doing lots of running training and target shooting, and also the importance of teamwork, and that you can't necessarily be the best at everything, and that was instilled very early on. And also a sense of when you fall off the horse, get back on. So kind of toughened me up.
Quite literally.
Exactly that. But I do feel very happy that I grew up, as a child in the 80s, when we just didn't have the screens and the technology like there is today. So a lot of that time was outside, doing sporty stuff and channeling that energy. So I think that just grew and grew, and that led me to having some pretty helpful qualities for starting a life later on as a adventurer, among other things.
Yeah. I can see that is all a really good grounding, and I bet you obviously must have had some great parental support or carer support to allow you take all that time to do those things. And I think sometimes as a parent myself, when you know that you've put all this time in, and sadly, sometimes when they become teenagers and things fall off a bit, you think, well, was it really worth it? But I think it really is, because you're building something, those foundations, if you're fortunate enough to be able to give that to your kids, or I get that as a kid. My husband's mum always talks about how she got up at 4 a.m. for him and his twin to go swimming.
Yeah.
And they got to county level and whatever. And, it's definitely breeds some sort of skills and strength. So I think to all the parents out there, it is worth it. Really, it is.
Yeah. And I suppose as a child, you never think about that. It's just, it's just your life. This is just the normal. But yeah, looking back, I felt very fortunate that, I had those opportunities, but also my mum and dad weren't pushy parents either. Like, we were doing it because we wanted to be doing it.
Because you loved it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Which is everything. Because then when someone says to you, because you love something, because you're willing to put the effort in and you enjoy something, I'm going to help you and support you to do that, then you would just want to do it all the more. So it's a great, great message. But did you have sort of a level of self-belief quite naturally early on? Because again, that's something that really limits people later on.
I think I did, because I was successful in these competitions. My confidence grew and grew, and I wasn't, like, I'm a terrible runner, always have been. And even from an early age, people would laugh at me trying to run, and that stuck with me to, like, now I'm in mid-40s and it's like, no, I can't run. So these things definitely do embed early. You take them on board, but certainly the stuff that I was really good at, that gave me massive confidence to keep doing it.
And were there any specific, like, people or moments or challenges, anything that was sort of a bit more pivotal that sort of really changed your trajectory, as it were?
Yeah, I think the sort of really pivotal moment for me, Wendy, came when I was in my early 20s, and I went traveling in New Zealand, and I threw myself out of an aeroplane, did a tandem skydive, and I just fell in love with it. I loved that feeling. I loved the fear and the adrenaline and the terror. And I got down and I was with my brother. We went backpacking for 4 months in Australia and New Zealand, which was phenomenal. Amazing. But I just thought, I want to go back and do this again right now. But also I then had this thought, there's people here working in these roles, getting paid to jump out of aeroplanes every day of the year. I want to move here to New Zealand and get employed as a skydiving camera woman. So massive, big, ridiculous, audacious goal, because I didn't know anything about skydiving. I didn't know anything about filming, and I didn't know anybody in New Zealand apart from my brother. And none of that mattered, because I just thought, I can learn these skills and I can give this a go. So that's when I came back to the UK, carried on working as a graphic designer in London, and then saved up enough money to go back to New Zealand, put myself through my skydiving course, and eventually I landed my dream job and was getting paid to jump out of aeroplanes up to 12 times a day, every day. And I'll just say on that point about the parents, when I went home and said to my mum and dad, I'm moving to New Zealand to become a skydiver, they went, go for it. And I think that's huge. A lot of parents really like, no, you are not. This is not happening. And they said, go for it. And then when they came out to visit me later on, they did skydives, and,
Amazing.
So, very, very lucky to have that level of, support.
Yeah. And encouragement, saying, pursue your dreams. And it was a big dream.
It was a big dream.
do you think it was slightly that sort of younger naivety where you just thought, yeah, I could do that? Or
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't overthink it. I didn't think it at all.
Yes, you didn't overthink it. That's that's so key, isn't it? I think that's the problem with, as we age, think about all the possibilities of what could go wrong and whatever. And
Well, I
actually,
call it my 21, I call it hanging on to my 21-year-old mindset. And I consciously now have to go, okay, come on, what
what
would
would
my
I?
21-year-old mindset think about this? So most people say, like, what would you tell your younger self? But I actually look to my younger self to guide me now in lots of ways. Obviously, I've got lots more experience and knowledge now, but I loved that sort of carefreeness, really.
Yeah, and it's the mindset. That's what you're saying. So it's not necessarily the whole being at that point, but it's very much the why not?
Yeah.
And certainly, having parents that say, well, because of this, this, and this, they may have thought that they may have been worried for you.
Yeah, I'm sure behind closed doors that it was not maybe as I imagined it, but in my mind, it was like, yeah, go for it.
So you were filming other people jumping out for their sort of
Yeah,
record of their event. Oh, amazing.
that's it. Yeah, so
Incredible.
basically, I was doing 12 jumps a day roughly. So I'd have a packer, all the camera staff, and the had packers. So you just had two parachutes, you rotating all day long, and it was just an incredible
How long did you do that for?
several years. And I was just around the most incredibly positive people where anything seemed possible.
Yeah.
And I think that was just such a, looking back, that was just, just framed my
But
early 20s beautifully.
But you always tend to get that with sort of adventure sports and those sort of outward boundy things. Always the sort of instructors and people I've come across,
Yeah.
they've always seemed super laid back,
Yeah.
but also really just can do, but also very encouraging and pushing. So I I did a skydive, probably same place, absolutely incredible. And I loved the fact I was just strapped to someone and didn't have to do anything myself. So that it just had to happen. There was no choice. I loved that. And I do remember vividly hanging out because they're still sitting on the plane and you're
Yeah.
hanging off the, oh my goodness, quite amazing. But I would do it again. That's what I would do again. But I also did a bungee jump in New Zealand and I don't think I would do that again. But I do remember the people working there were just so relaxed, but they knew that you needed that nudge and they would kind of say, 3, 2, 1, go. You were off and you didn't know what was happening, so that you didn't overthink it. So you just went.
And also, Wendy, if you didn't get out of the plane, none of us got paid. So people had to be very adamant that they were not getting out of the plane, because before they knew it, they were like you, dangling out of the plane. 3, 2, 1, and you're gone. So that was the nature of the beast.
Quite amazing. And then so obviously then there was a big step, because I don't know what the gap was, but then you were invited or you came up with the idea of your skydive over Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I heard about this opportunity of a world first expedition to skydive next to Mount Everest. So I already had the skill set to ring up and say, I want to take part in this as a solo jumper. And it quickly became apparent there were no other women signed up. So I knew that was my hook for getting sponsors on board.
Absolutely.
That I was going to become the first woman to skydive Everest. And the organizer said, yeah, great, that will be £24,000. I said, yeah, no worries. I didn't have £24,000, but that didn't matter, because that just set that bar high for me to go out and find sponsors, people to buy into my vision, which I did. I achieved that. It took many no's to getting 1 or 2 yeses. But again, that was quite an amazing learning curve as well. And also drawing on my skills as a designer, that came in really handy for putting together pitch decks, and also having a little bit of experience of speaking back then. That came in handy as well for, professionally presenting yourself to sponsors. So I managed to get that together. It involved jumping out of a small aircraft at 29,500 feet.
And that's risky in itself, isn't it?
Well, the
Getting a small
aircraft
plane.
never flown to that height.
No, because you hear that helicopters can't go to a certain. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so we didn't even know if the plane was going to make it up there. And this plane had been flown in from Switzerland. a Pilates porter. And anyway, so we got up there, we made it up there. The first person to skydive Everest was about 3 seconds in front of me. My camera flyer climbed out of the plane onto the camera step, ready to film my exit. So I'm giving my count, ready, set, go. And my camera flyer's hand is on my shoulder, pushing me back into the plane. Pilot had held up the stop sign, don't let the jumpers out. It was too late. I had
one had already gone.
Yeah, one had already gone. I had too much momentum on my ready, set, go, and I fell out of the plane.
Oh my goodness!
You do all this training. I was an experienced skydiver, and you just think, this was not part of the plan. So my camera fly jumped with me. They didn't have to. They could have just climbed back into the plane, but meant that I got really cool image.
Oh my goodness!
Curvature. And then went through the clouds. So the reason he held the stop sign up was, there was a pretty thick layer of cloud over the landing area. So I didn't have any visuals on the landing area beneath me. And there's very few safe places to land, in the Himalayas, apart from this one area.
There's no fields to kind of drag across nicely. No.
So long story short, came through the clouds, pulled my parachute, which was 3 times the size of my normal chute. Parachute opened, which was great. I thought I need to take my oxygen because I had supplemental oxygen. So I decided to take the mask off to get full vision on the ground below. And when you're skydiving, especially when you're learning, you don't have anyone there to ask. You really have to back yourself to make good decisions. So, and you don't have any fancy equipment telling you where you are in relation to the ground. So you've just got your eyes and you've got your own judgment. So I decided to take my oxygen mask off. Felt a little bit dizzy because I was still quite high, but managed to make it down to the landing area. And then about a couple of minutes after I landed, it was complete whiteout fog. So I felt really fortunate to walk away safely from that jump. Same thing happened 2 days later. A team of skydivers went up in our team. Some more jumpers went up and the pilot held up the stop sign. They'd all gotten out. And for them, the clouds went all the way to the ground. So they had no visuals.
Oh, my goodness.
Whatsoever, and they had some pretty nasty injuries in there. So, that's the nature of the beast in these high altitude environments, that it's the weather is very changeable.
And training for the unexpected, that's impossible to train for the fact that you kind of fall out of the plane. So you're already in crisis, panic, tumble mode, but But you've had so much experience, presumably, that your brain quickly goes into, right, how do I handle this?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And big credit to the cameraman. My goodness. They really didn't need to do that. I think I would have been like, yeah, see ya.
Yeah, I'll meet you down there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing was the media. That was I was thrown into the world of media for about, 48 to 72 hours afterwards, flown back to the UK, and then did 6 live TV interviews in London, and some of them were quite terrifying, like going out to CNN, CBS, put in a room with a fake bookcase and a camera lens, and they said, don't look anywhere else but this lens, and don't worry, you're just going out live to America. And a little late American in an earpiece, a little earpiece, and a lady chatting to me, asking me, how did I acclimate? So I said, very well, thank you. I later found that meant acclimatise. Yes. But that was a whole new world for me, was that the media, and you kind of sink or swim pretty quickly in that environment.
Oh my goodness, yeah. But with benefit of hindsight, you've done a lot of speaking since. You just are who you are. Whatever you say, and it's all fine because you've done something amazing, quite frankly, that they're interested in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different beast. You're facing a different beast.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about other beasts later.
Yeah.
Just a little segue there. So tell me then, so you've done that, and you told me before that for you, one of the beautiful parts of that was that you saw the summit of Everest from clearly a place that very few humans have actually seen it.
Yeah, popping out of the clouds. It's literally it was beautiful blue sky and then a layer of cloud, and the only thing popping out from the clouds was the summit of Everest.
And you were quite nearby, so it
Was
would be
phenomenal.
incredible.
And I just remember thinking, that's it. I'm coming back to climb to the summit of Everest, but I don't know anything about climbing, don't know anything about mountaineering. But none of that matters because I know I can learn those skills, or I can at least have a go. So I made Everest a 5-year goal. It actually turned into a 9-year goal. Did as much climbing as I could to, get the skills and the experience. I met people on Everest who had never stepped foot on snow before going for the summit. And it's like, just don't be one of those people.
Just think of the crevasses and everything I've ever seen,
and the poor Sherpas that could potentially
have to manage that group.
Well, so I have a motto: don't get lucky, get prepared. So that runs through everything I do. If I don't know how to do it, and that spans everything in life, from the more smaller things to the bigger goals, is, if I don't know how to do it, go and figure it out, have a go. And, either you like it or you don't, but you'll never know if you don't try.
Never more wise words. But when you see the thing, and I think that to make it more relatable, although we're talking about these big things, the point is that those rules all apply to pretty much anything. And I could think back to when I was in pain and I had to make small steps forward because my confidence was so low and because I had crept so far into my comfort zone, which was not a comfortable place to be, quite frankly, that to get back out, I had to, gently push myself over and over and over to tell my nervous system it was all right to do that, to give it the information and the inputs and my brain to learn. And I do think that, when you've had a knock like that, it's a harder climb, but it's still possible. But I agree with you about the preparation as well. I think sometimes you need to, there's an awful lot of chat in the world, let's say the social media world, but the world, about quick fixes, hacks, how to get from A to B super quickly in our health terms, in whatever terms, or kind of, I can be this very quickly. I can choose my role and do that. And actually, I just go against it because I know that it took me years of very small movements, rethinking, really re-understanding movement for me. But also I know that everything I've done wherever I've wanted to achieve something, I've had to build up the layers, not just of confidence, but of experience. And so what you say is absolutely spot on for me. And I think it's a bit of a disservice to the next generation that now that everything is so quick and responsive that you can literally sort of ask for food and a nap and it's in your door in 10 seconds flat is dangerous, really.
Yeah, everything's in the blink of a moment, but there's certain things you can't fast track. And also, Wendy, I think it's about when you compare yourself and you see what other people are doing, they're not at day one. It's easy to, well, you hope they're not. Some of them are at day one. A person that's never stepped foot on snow on Everest. But, for the most part, I think people are a bit more sensible than that. But it's easy to compare yourself, but they might have put years and years and years into honing those skills and honing their craft. So I think it's about recognizing where you are on that journey. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a beginner.
No.
I love being a beginner.
Yeah, because then you've got permission to fail and fall and laugh at yourself and get back up and keep going. But it's the getting up and keeping going. Not if you don't like it. Granted, if you don't like something, don't do it. Always find the thing that you love or you like. Because I'm sure if you got into mountaineering climbing and you thought, do you know what, this is just not for me, you probably would have binned your goal because it wasn't the right goal for you. And I think that's so important that we choose the thing that makes us happy, that gives us fulfillment and joy. And
But we are odd creatures. Like climbing a mountain isn't that enjoyable a lot of the time at the time, but afterwards, you know, you think, oh wow, that was pretty cool. Like, look what I've managed to do. But yeah, definite wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea.
then also the way you climb a mountain. So if we're just talking about climbing a mountain as kind of like, you know, an analogy, you know,
Yeah.
analogy or paraphrasing, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you are climbing your mountain, I think it's really important that, you know, you take breaks, you have little stops. You stop and you turn and look at the view and say, well done, this is what I've done so far. And you gather that positivity as you go and you think, yeah, that was hard, but I feel good for it that hard, and so on and so forth. Because otherwise it's one massive great mountain, it's a hell of a long way to the top, and you doubt whether you can get it. I hope you're enjoying the conversation. I'm just taking a quick break to ask you a question. Have you started to notice that the everyday things you used to do without thinking, like getting up off the floor, lifting the shopping, or hopping over a stile, now take more effort than you feel they should? Well, if your answer is yes, you are far from alone. And I'm excited to tell you that I've written a book to help you. It's called Move Well for Life, Unlock the Life-Changing Power of Everyday Movement. As you'll know from listening to this podcast or following me online, I don't talk about chasing fitness trends or imposing rigid routines. Instead, my message is all about learning how small, natural movements woven into your daily life can help you feel stronger, more confident, and ready for whatever life throws at you. Move Well for Life is available to pre-order now, and it's out in January here in the UK and Europe, and later next year in America. You can find the link in the show notes to read more about it, or simply search Move Well for Life and Wendy online. I firmly believe that every movement counts, and it's never too late to reclaim yours. Now, back to the episode. Did you doubt yourself on Everest at any point? Did you think,
loads. I mean, we don't have time in this, but, you know, it's quite a story of what happened on Everest. But, you know, when I arrived, I was on the north side, so it's very barren.
Tibetan. That's Tibetan side, yeah.
So way less people, no helicopter rescue. And, you know, you are just in this very big, expansive base camp. And there she is. There is, you know, Mount Everest, and you think, wow, how on earth am I going to navigate that? And then, you know, it starts, I was on the mountain 47 days above 5,000 meters, and you do acclimatization round. So you go up a bit, you come back, you go up, you come back. And it starts, you know, you start breaking that challenge down to campsite, or even a lot of the time is just one foot in front of the other. Sometimes you might only be able to do 10 paces and then you have to stop, literally, especially at really high altitude when it's difficult to breathe, difficult to move. You know, you might just be doing one step at a time. So I think it is about breaking that down and not just thinking, you know, how am I going to get there to the top of that massive lump of ice and rock,
the biggest lump there is.
And then it just starts slowly unfolding over the time of how this is all going to work out and pan out.
And presumably once you've gone to a certain height, it's a bit like running a marathon where they say you should only train to 20 miles or whatever it is, because after that, you know, there's no real gains in the training. It's probably similar where you can start to see and visualize that summit.
Do you know, it's an interesting thing, and you'll probably find this interesting as a runner, but you know, over those 47 days, your body is deteriorating that whole time. You are not building strength or muscle. You're definitely losing muscle because of the high altitude. But on the flip side of that, your mental resilience is getting stronger and stronger and stronger, I think. That's my theory on it. So, you know, what you might have thought was a bit, I'm not comfortable with that, or I don't want to do that. You know, that might be food, that might be toilet situations, that might be anything. By the end of it, you're just fully feral, really. And you just don't care, you know, like when I say I'm talking about me, like, you know, your nails and, you know, 2/3 of my hair actually fell out on Everest, which was kind of weird.
Wow.
But, you know, you just this is just all part and parcel of it, and you're kind of really uh, becoming much more resilient to the environment you're in. And I think the body is just phenomenal what we can
Yeah.
achieve, way beyond what our brain will tell us we can achieve.
Well, it's always trying to keep us safe. That's the problem. It's trying to keep us to survive, and you were pushing against survival.
Yeah,
Everything's atrophying,
yeah,
and you must be right that your brain is getting, your mindset and your resilience is getting stronger, because you're having to cope with harder and harder physical
yeah,
ability as you go on, and therefore it's got to be, because there is no other way.
yeah. And it's just it's a really hostile environment to be at high altitude. And I, out of those 47 days, I was on supplemental oxygen less than 24 hours of that.
Wow.
So you really are, you know, you're in it, as it were. And the higher up the mountain, the more committed you are, knowing that there's no helicopter rescue, or it's just a really it's a harder side to climb Everest, because there's longer distances between the campsites to cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, fascinating, really, in hindsight, looking back on what.
Hugely courageous. And obviously it sounds like it's something that through the prior experiences you built up that courage, and
Yep.
the thought that you could do it. So huge respect. Absolutely incredible thing to do. And very few women particularly who have done that over the years, so it's
Well,
truly amazing.
the higher the mountains, the less women are on them. But also, Wendy, I think the preparation, you can bring that right down to climbing your local hill, or people doing like Snowdon and that. And you see people going up there in flip-flops with little kids and a dog, and just no sort of thought that the weather patterns may come in change quickly. And you start chatting to mountain rescue, and they're just rescuing all sorts of families and young people, and they just had no idea of that, what the dangers they were stepping into. So I think preparation runs all the way to going out for a walk in the hills, out on Dartmoor, or on the Yorkshire Dales, or any of these sort of wild places. You've got to be prepared and have the right gear, and have some water and food and extra layers.
And just really know the world that you're in, and respect its force, respect its ability to turn on you. And everyone hears those stories about Everest, but as you say, they don't really think about them, about sort of the UK spaces or whatever. But they can be, as you say, in Scotland, where I'm from originally, things can change very dramatically, and there's a lot of really sad stories, and actually some of them you can't prepare for, but you can do your best to prepare as well as you can. And quite frankly, that preparation as well, it's your learning, it's an interest, isn't it, in your environment. So to segue perfectly, you now are really, really fascinated in about conservation work, and you've been doing some incredible work. You've raised £500,000, is that right?
Yeah.
You've reached hundreds of thousands of people with your messages about conservation. You've had the Now King talk about your talks on conservation. You've had Sir David Attenborough talk about it. I mean, this is pretty incredible stuff. So it sounds to me like you have, by pushing yourself in those little challenges you've done in your life, in the huge challenges you've done in life, it's also given you drive to stand up for what you feel passionately about and believe in, and perhaps do that more fearlessly, because you know that this is so important. So speak to us a little bit about the work that you're so passionate about now.
Yeah, so perfect segue from what we've just spoken about. So you're back in my 20s, and probably in my early 30s. I was interested in world records and world firsts, but now that couldn't be further from my mind. Like, doesn't interest me at all. Now I use my adventures as a platform to raise money and raise global media attention, to talk about environmental conservation causes. So adventure really is become a tool if you like. And my true passion is my charity, How Many Elephants, and my campaign, which is kicking off pretty soon, World Female Ranger Week, now in its 5th year. So that all came about because I went back to university and did a master's in sustainable design. And I was researching a material called vegetable ivory, which is almost identical in colour and texture to elephant ivory. And it got me researching the African elephant crisis. And I was so horrified by what I was reading of 96 elephants being poached each day in Africa for their ivory, that I wanted to use my skills as a graphic designer to come up with a fresh awareness raising campaign that was non-gory, non-political, non-gruesome, but just visualizing the data in a really impactful way. So I built this necklace. It's a really quite a striking necklace. It's won 5 design awards so far. And it's 96 elephants cut in vegetable ivory to show the daily poaching rate. Amazing. And then to accompany the necklace is my global traveling exhibition that showcases 35,000 elephants, so monochrome elephants repeated over and over and over and over to show the annual poaching rate in Africa. So when you see and connect with this data in a purely visual way, it's proving to be very successful in terms of audiences that I can connect with. So schools, young people, and people like me who I don't want to see gruesome images. You can't unsee what you've seen.
Yeah.
And that can totally ruin my day or my week if I've just seen a real hard hitting image that I didn't want to see. So that's become kind of a USP of my charity, is any newsletter, any social media, any film that you watch that's How Many Elephants, you're not going to see anything gruesome. So that's where it all started. That's the awareness raising side of what I still do. But because of my adventure background, when I heard about this team of arguably the world's first all-female anti-poaching team in South Africa, they launched in 2013 when I was doing my master's. And I reached out to these women, and they already knew about How Many Elephants and my exhibition. And they said, when are you coming out? So I went out, and I've since spent a huge amount of time on the front line, not only with those ladies, but with many other teams all over Africa. And these women, they just blow my mind. I'm now working with about 5,500 female wildlife rangers around the world. And the reason these women are proving to be so impactful is not only are they patrolling on the front lines successfully, they're also fantastic communicators. They're amazing role models, educators, and beacons of hope in their communities. So yeah, this is what World Female Ranger Week is all about. I was inspired to share the stories of these ladies. So I set up this platform as a way to amplify their voices in the global media. So just to skip back to the conversation earlier about, I said it was really scary to jump into the world of media when I was in my 20s after I'd skydived Everest. I think that subconsciously was when the seed was planted of, how can I harness the power of the global media for a greater good than me jumping out of an aeroplane or me climbing a mountain? So fast forward quite a few years, we've now had over 500 million views around World Female Ranger Week. And it just, like I said, I'm just humbled every single day by these incredible women that I work with. And even though women are making huge strides forward in conservation, still only less than 11% of the global ranger workforce is female. So the excitement for me is looking at the ripple effect of the last 12 years. So employing women from local communities in Africa, but also around the world. You know, these women now are the breadwinners. They've bought land, they've built houses, their kids are in school. Some of them have gone on and got higher educations, and they've got access to better healthcare or healthcare at all. So it's fascinating looking at
Incredible
the
work.
ripple effect over a 12-year period. And I'm actually going back this September to do another master's, just to reassess the data 10 to 12 years on.
And tell me about in that time period, have you seen an effect on poaching levels?
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons I'm going back to do my master's, because 96 elephants now has dropped down to the newer preferred figure is 55 elephants. So you
Oh
think,
my
wow, this is amazing.
goodness.
This is brilliant. So it is, but the flip side of that is it's not brilliant, because human elephant conflict has gone through the roof.
Right.
So because the human population is expanding at such a rate, especially in Africa, with the population set to double by 2050, which is just terrifying. You know, people are moving out and out and out into the habitats of the elephants. So the elephant corridors are getting squeezed smaller and smaller and smaller, and there is inevitable conflict. So now I'm working with some amazing direct action partners on the ground in Africa, and we've just created a how many elephants beehive fence. So how does that work? Elephants are scared of bees. And so
that's so funny,
isn't it? The largest animal scared of one of the smallest animals. They're scared of bees, so the beehives are put along the borders between farmland and the elephant corridor. And so that keeps the elephants away. And then the bees pollinate the farmers' crops. And then this is the bit that I love, is generally the wives of the farmers or women in the local communities process the honey, sell it to the local safari lodges, and then with the profits, they've set up organic gardens. So they're growing vegetables for themselves, but also to sell back to the community. So it is win, 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 win.
Circular, natural economy.
Nature's own solution. Yeah. So
who thought of that? That's brilliant. That's genius.
Well, that came about I think that was in 2006, so 19 years ago, but it's
so brilliant.
It's only really it's really ramping up now. It's a really exciting time, I think, to be looking at human wildlife conflict and how to promote coexistence. So even though, like, part of my job as visualizing data as a designer is looking, how can I get these messages across to the general public in a really quick and compelling way? And at the minute, you know, that's my next task with this next master's is, okay, I've got the poaching across in a pretty compelling way, but the human elephant conflict is my next mission of how to, you know, get people on board with that. And a lot of people get excited when I talk about that, because a lot of people love bees and a lot of people love elephants. So it's kind of a match made in heaven, really.
It really is. And these things do take quite a while to take root properly. There needs to, for one community to really believe in it, and they need to have seen the effects in another community, and it really have worked well. So I can imagine that always an idea takes a while to really get going until it does.
But it sounds like so much buy-in. Like the NGO we're working with at the minute, they've now got 8 kilometers of continual fencing, which is phenomenal, because it's taken a lot of time to get all of the farmers, all of the stakeholders on board, and you only have to have one missing and it breaks the whole thing, right? It needs to be a continual fence, because elephants are problem solvers and they're very intelligent animals, and they will find a way through, because for them the farmers' crops is literally like candy.
And tell me a little bit about the female rangers then, about what they like about the work and why it is interesting to them and they want to do that.
So back in 2013, poaching was at an all-time high in the Kruger National Park. And that's when one of the park wardens came up with this amazing idea to go into the local communities and ask the women to come forward and try out as rangers. So just as an example, and this is purely illustrative, and they go through a very rigorous training, same as the men. So in the SAS, in the special forces, let's say 38 people will turn up for training and 3 will finish, 3 will get through it. Again, this is just an example. 38 of these women turned up, 35 finished. And I don't think anyone, even the most staunchest anti-women coming into the anti-poaching teams, I think they were all blown away with the strength and the determination of these women. So I've interviewed hundreds of female rangers over the last 12 years. And, you know, the common thread is with a lot of them is we had nothing to lose. We just grabbed that opportunity with both hands and we went for it. You know, and a lot of these ladies, they're battling challenges like social stigma from their own families. You know, the idea of a woman doing an overnight patrol with a man that's not her husband or not even a relative is, you know, you're really pushing cultural barriers here. And they're changing attitudes towards the role of women. You know, for them, a lot of these communities, they just think women can't do this. This is man's work. And I've seen that echoed around the world, throughout Asia and the Americas and Africa and Europe. So I think women are just proving to be just massively successful at it because they're just very, you know, I think we are just resilient creatures.
Yeah, well, and
nurturing, very
nurturing, exactly. And I'm sure a lot of those women have, you know, lived a lot tougher lives than sort of the soft Western life. And you know, they're raising families in difficult circumstances. You've got to be.
Well, a lot of the ladies I work with, they've escaped abusive marriages. Some of them are AIDS orphans. Some of them have, you know, experienced extreme poverty, extreme marginalisation. So they've, you know, when they say we didn't have anything to lose, they meant that, you know.
And what an opportunity as well, because the self-belief from doing that, knowing the difference that they're making is incredible. And which other countries around the world? You said all the way around. Where else is getting involved?
All sorts. So I work with around 4,500 female wildlife rangers across 18 African countries. I'm working with women in Brazil, in Northern America, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Malaysia, Indonesia,
wow,
India. Some amazing women that I'm working with in India and in Europe, Switzerland, all sorts. There's just such a and more recently, I'm quite excited about this one, is female rangers in Saudi Arabia.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I wouldn't have thought that was possible.
No. So
gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I would not have thought that either. So I'm quite excited by that one.
I mean, that's just I can see you talked about the sort of ripple effects of how you are empowering these women in these communities, and I'm sure there's incredible stories for each of them. I'm sure they really buoy each other, and I'm sure it is a massively tight community because you'd need that support going against it. It's really, really incredible work, and I can see your passion. It's really evident, and for such a good cause. And you know, it affects everything. Wildlife, this incredible world, and it really does affect everything, particularly well into our future. So
I think it's naive to think that some problems are too far away to not affect you. You know,
no,
everything's connected. Nothing exists.
Absolutely.
And I think the pandemic showed us that, just how connected we are, and also how quickly people can change and mobilize when we have to.
And that's the sad thing. It shouldn't come down to, in these circumstances when we have to. It's often a bit too late. You know, a lot of it was quite too late for the pandemic. And a lot of people lost their lives because we hadn't planned for the future. But, you know, people like you are thinking ahead. They're thinking ahead for future generations and the future of the world. And, you know, that's incredible work.
Yeah, and I've just set up a tour operator, which I'm very excited about because I've been given the very rare privilege of taking small groups, so 6 people and myself, to the front line where we'll be immersed with all female anti-poaching teams. So, this is really new ground, and it's taken me over a decade to build these relationships of trust with these women. But also, this cuts out the middleman, so the maximum amount of money can be going back on the ground to support these women. Because I come from a non-profit background, everyone's like, "Oh, you've gone to the dark side," and I'm like, "Oh, no, I haven't. I'm just using this as an opportunity to." I'm calling it experiential philanthropy.
Yeah, I don't. Sorry, I disagree with them. We need business is needed to
100%.
help to fund
I agree.
causes. If we think that we can manage it fully without, then we're
I'm a big supporter of doing good, however you can make that happen. And to be honest with you, if I had if I was sort of really wealthy through a business, I'd be giving so much of that back to causes that I cared about. And I think that is totally the way to do it if you can.
But also, that's finite.
Yeah.
If you've had the skills to do that, and this is what you're doing, you've got the skills because you've got courage, determination, drive, and passion. And you're putting all that in. So your time is worth so much more financially, if you see what I mean. All of that effort is huge. And that's the point, is that we need to use the skills we have to do good as well.
Well, a lot of especially when I give talks, because that's how I make my money, through being a speaker, which is great because I get booked talking about Everest generally, or skydiving Everest. And then, my story naturally comes round to conservation and female rangers and elephants. And so it's just a really nice sort of way of presenting my story. But lots of people say to me, especially younger people, what skills do I need to get into X, Y, and Z? And I say focus on the peripheral skills. It's so easy these days with programs like Canva that anyone can be a designer, get to be a good writer, and with AI, you don't need AI to write it for you. Write it and then use AI to figure out how can I make improvements on this. So use these tools, but develop the skills beforehand, and learn how to speak, learn how to stand up in the front of a big audience or a small audience, which is sometimes way more, tense than a big room full of people, and how to present yourself professionally. Like I said at the beginning, being a designer has been invaluable, because I wouldn't have been able to afford to pay a designer to do all the design I've done with my charity and my adventure sponsorship proposals, etc. So I think the peripheral skills are so important.
And develop that little courage muscle. Keep just gently stretching it as much as you can, because again, like use it or lose it with muscles, you've got to just keep using things and building, but also not having perhaps the expectations to climb Everest and skydive, but that may come from what you do, because I'm sure prior to, even when you were doing your skydiving, which is a big ask, filming incredible experience, at that point in your life, you never were, I'm sure, thinking about, well, I'm going to skydive Everest, climb Everest.
It just unfolded.
Trekking on horses that we haven't talked about, and now that you would never have thought of that. It's all building blocks, isn't it? So
it totally evolved. So
so tell me, so what's next for you is next week, when this is being recorded, is your Women's Ranger Week, which I'm going to be talking about on socials as well.
Yeah.
Presumably that's an annual event now.
It's an annual event. It's now in its 5th year.
5th year, you said, exactly. So anyone who is listening and who is moved by the conversation and either wants to get involved, wants to go on one of your trips, is just interest, then obviously big encouragement to reach out, or to get you to speak, to talk about it, of course.
Absolutely.
And so tell me about what you would hope that the listener of this podcast is going to take away from the conversation.
So in answer to your earlier question, next week I'm heading to Zambia for the first in-person event for World Female Ranger Week. So 70 female rangers will be congregating in the Kafue National Park in Zambia. And we've got a full week of activities, and I'll be giving a keynote, and it's just going to be massively exciting for me anyway, just creating this campaign from the ground up. And now I've collaborated with a much bigger NGO, and they're funding a lot of these women to congregate in Zambia. So really exciting times. But yeah, my advice, my motto, think big, dream bigger. So I think for me, it's about I love to have a big goal, setting big, audacious goals, just because, I think they stretch us. They're scary. And I think that I enjoy that. I love the fact that you've got a reason to jump out of bed in the morning and think, I'm going to work towards this goal. And that might be, like I said earlier, Everest was a 5-year goal and turned into a 9-year goal. But I think it's good to have that goal, have something that you're working towards, and you're just chipping away, because, a lot of the times things does get tough. I think that's just for anyone. That's just life, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you've got that kind of guiding light there in the background, that does keep you motivated. So yeah, basically set big, audacious goals that excite you a lot and scare you a little. Or should it be the other way around?
But also that give you direction and hopefully purpose. Because purpose is so important, isn't it, to help you get out of bed? It's incredible
what you can achieve when you are truly passionate and have purpose. I used to think passion was enough, but now I realise passion with purpose it's quite a powerful
winning combo.
It really is. Yeah.
Well, I hope that the Ranger Week goes really, really well, that you get a lot out of it, because as credit to the work that you've done, but also that everyone attending, and hopefully you get some great press and media around it as well. Obviously, I'll do my little tiny corner of the internet of sharing as well. And then hopefully when this podcast goes out too, you can use it. It's wonderful to hear from someone so inspiring, so down to earth. So for all the things you've done, you're incredibly relatable, which is a rare thing. And so it was really, really enjoyable to talk to you. And thank you so much for sparing the time.
Thank you. Lovely to chat with you, Wendy.
I hope you've enjoyed listening. And if you have, you can help by doing 3 things. First, press the follow button to tell podcast platforms you want to listen again. Second, please give the show a 5-star rating and leave a review about why you liked it. And third, I'd love you to share it with friends and family or on your socials, for which I'm truly thankful. Finally, if this podcast is making you want to start reclaiming your own movement, join me in the Reclaim Movement membership for classes, both live and by replay, and countless videos of mini movement breaks to add into your daily life, covering practical and fun, important natural movements. Visit reclaimmovement.co.uk/membership to get started with your 7-day free trial. See you for the next episode, and thank you so much for listening.